Hi, it's Carrie Van Ice here at Barefoot Consultants, and today I want to talk to you about the dark side of the English teaching business, and that is namely scams. And there are scams out there, and you want to watch out for them. There's actually a few things that you want to watch out for. So there's something that we call scams, and I'm sure that when I say scam, you totally understand what I'm talking about. But I'm just going to lay it out for you, and then I'm going to give you a couple of other things that you want to watch out for that maybe aren't exactly scams, but definitely not a trap that you want to fall into, okay? So let's talk scams first. A scam is basically somebody who is pretending to be a recruiter or an employer, and they're trying to entice you into a very good-looking opportunity so that they can either get money from you in the form of, hey, here's a really great job, but we need you to pay your visa, your work visa up front, which is $2,000, or maybe it's only $550. And sometimes these amounts won't seem very high. So you might think, well, that sounds legitimate. And you might even look at the country where they say that this job exists, and it might be the exact amount. But if you can imagine them doing this to 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, even those little amounts start to add up. And they really don't have to do a lot to prove that they are legitimate. They're just looking for that really quick payoff, and then they completely disappear. They may also not ask for money. Maybe what they're really after is your personal information. So I want you to know right now, there is no reason for you, before you sign a contract, before you have an interview, before you've secured some kind of agreement with the school, for you to be providing really personal documentation. So you might need to let them know that you are a US citizen or a Canadian citizen or a citizen of the UK or Australia, because they want to know that you're a native English speaker. But that doesn't have to be a copy of your passport, for example. You might also need to provide them with proof and documentation that you have a college degree, if that's one of the requirements. But you should never, under any circumstances, be required to give them really personal documentation, like especially for the United States, where I come from, a social security number, for example. This is another country. You're going to be being paid in another currency, and it's a totally different tax structure. Your social security number is meaningless in another country. So there's no way that you would be giving out that kind of personal information. And what they're looking to do is just take that information and create fraudulent documents out of it and move on, or maybe they're looking to open credit cards accounts or things like that. Another thing that you do not want to give anybody before you are really deeply in the process. And I mean, basically you're about to sign on the dotted line, or you already have signed on the dotted line for a job that you know is legitimate. The second kind of thing that you want to look out for is what I would call a bad recruiter. And this isn't necessarily a scam. This is just a disreputable person who works for schools that may also be somewhat disreputable. Yes, there's a school. Yes, there's a job, but they are maybe not going to pay you what they say they're going to pay you. They're not going to live up to the contractual agreements that they've made with you. And this is basically somebody who is trying to pressure you into a job that you really don't want. So there's that type of person too. They don't have any sort of super nefarious kind of motivation where they want to steal your money or steal your personal information. They just are really disreputable, and you don't want to be working for them. The third thing that you want to look out for is a bad employer. And again, just like the recruiter, it's yes, there's a real institution there. Yes, there's a real job offer on the table. But the fact is, they don't oftentimes live up to their agreements. If they say they're going to provide housing, they don't provide housing. Or they don't pay on time, or they don't pay you what they said they would pay you. Or maybe you're promised a certain amount of holiday leave throughout the year, but you find out that that actually isn't the case. You might be getting offered health insurance, for example, and then once you get there, then that's not part of the deal anymore. I interviewed a woman when I was creating Speak English and Get Paid for the scam portion of the course, and you will find out more about scams inside the course in step 5. And she basically had a verbal agreement. I mean, she'd had interviews, she knew the job was legitimate, she knew the institution was legitimate, and she was, sold the house, got rid of all the stuff, packed a bag, was on her way to China, made one last call with her future employer, like from the airport in China, basically like, oh, I'm getting on the plane, I'm gonna be there soon, making sure somebody's gonna be there to pick me up. And that person was like, oh, well, no, we've actually hired somebody else, and good luck. Because she didn't take that step to get something in writing and have a firm legal document. So also, I want to say on this whole subject of scams, anytime that you are looking at a job description, looking at any kind of contract that you would sign, anything that is sort of legally binding about your work that you're going to do there, that should always, always be in English. Anything that you sign should be in English. Never sign a document that is not in English. And even once you're there, yes, you do want to have a legal working visa to work in that country, and you will have to provide your passport, documentation, all of that stuff for the process of getting your documentation in order. But you should not have to forfeit, for example, your passport for the duration of your contract. I have a friend that I worked with here in Mexico. This happened to her husband in Thailand. And basically he was working for another institute, she was working for one, he was working for another, both teaching English. And the institute that he was working for said, oh no, give us your passport, we're going to put it in our safe, we're going to look after it while you're working here so that nothing happens, because I mean, hey, let's face it, if you're working for us and you lose your passport, then that's a problem. So we'll just save you from that fate, and you give it to us and we'll keep it in our safe here at the school, and then when you're ready to go home or travel or anything, you just come to us and we'll give it back to you. Well, they made it sound like that was a good thing and that they were looking out for him. But what ended up happening is they did take that passport and they did make a false passport, and somebody tried to enter Canada on that passport. And well, even though he had nothing to do with it, he didn't know that it had happened. He'd already left that job, gotten his passport back, and was free and clear of that situation. But that passport popped up somewhere, that false passport popped up somewhere in a place it shouldn't have been. And that gentleman was, the way I understand it, I'm not sure if this is still the case, but he was refused the right to ever travel to Canada or the United States again for the rest of his life because of that, even though he had nothing to do with it. So there's a lot of things to watch out for when it comes to this journey of becoming an English teacher. For the most part, 80, 90, 95% of all jobs are legitimate. And you definitely, it's not a landmine out there, but there are these little red flags. There are these warning signs that you want to watch out for. And so if this is a topic that you should know more about, so inside the course in step 5, there's parts 1 and 2. I talk more about scams and what you need to watch out for. But I think that especially if you're at the beginning part of this journey, this is a topic that you want to pay attention to, because I don't want you to fall into any kind of traps. I want you to have a good experience. I want you to know how to research and make sure that any company that you're going to work for is legitimate. So just go inside the course, explore that. There's some webinar playbacks there, there's lessons there, there's the audio interview I was talking about in there, and you can learn lots of great stuff about scams. I even include resources on places you can go on the web to find out if an organization is legitimate or not. So have a look, and I hope that this has been informative for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video in a month.